Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zeb from Zeb Outdoors. I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I'm with a good friend of mine, Martin Hazell. Martin, how are you doing?
I'm good, Zed.
Excellent stuff. Yeah. So if you've been watching any of my recent videos, you will see Martin making an appearance showing a fantastic tutorial on how to make a toggle from elm.
Elder,
that was it.
Yeah.
I was just testing you, Martin.
Yeah, thanks.
That was it.
Thanks.
You're on top of things today.
Oh, yes.
Martin, that's it. He's a sharp person. Just keeping me on top of things. So we've done it from elder. That was it. Like I said, I was just testing you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've done a great tutorial that was very well received. And moving on from that, obviously to something that's a little bit more kind of involved. Now, if you don't know about Martin, Martin is a very prominent green woodworker and also a basket maker and a general craftsman based in, was it West Dorset?
Yeah, West Dorset.
West Dorset we're in the southwest of England. It's a beautiful part of the country. We've actually been very blessed these couple of days we've been here, that I've been here. We've had some great weather, some great scenery, some great hospitality from Martin and his family. And like I said in this video, what Martin, one of the things he's very well known for is making kuksas. And very small miniature colour kuksas out of burr.
Yeah, that's it.
And stuff. So that he has a real speciality. And they're absolutely beautiful. So what Martin's going to do in this video very kindly is do a demonstration of the processes and steps that he goes through to make that. So with your kind permission, Martin, if you're okay, we'll show some of his work so you can get an idea and feel of what it is that we're talking about here. And then Martin's going to go ahead and do a talk through. So is that okay for you?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Excellent stuff. So let's have a look at some of his work and then we'll get onto the actual tutorial. So here we have just a small sample of the beautiful work that Martin's been doing with the burr. So just one thing, just before we go into these, so just to kind of clarify, this is something you helped me clarify, is there's burr and there's burl. So burl, you said, is the American terminology.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And burr is the British,
yeah,
European.
That's right. B-U-R-R in England, in Britain, and B-U-R-L in the States.
Right.
It's the same thing. And what a burr is, or a burl is it's a growth on the outside of a tree, and lots of trees have them. Right. Birch is,
so for example, we have these, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, this great big thing here looks like some kind of alien being, really. Is from a wych elm.
Right.
This is dried out. This is beyond my using, but my brother can turn this.
Right.
This is a bit more recent. That's a birch burr.
Right.
I used to, in the old days, occasionally take these from living trees. Mm-hmm. I don't do that anymore because I don't need to do that. People know that I work with burr, and they'll let me know about a tree that's come down, and I'll go and have some burrs off it, and also we harvest our own timber, and I
Gotcha.
often find burrs, so I get enough to work with.
Right. With the burr, just to quickly for those that may not be in the know, so what is it kind of physically like in terms of tree?
What happens is the burr develops as a result of some kind of stress to the tree, disease, insect attack, poor environmental conditions, and what it effectively does, it's an area on the tree that's kind of like sending out millions of branches, sort of, that very few of which develop into anything. So you get a very odd and a very interesting grain pattern in them. They're beautiful often inside. I mean, when you cut them open, you often get an amazing surprise about what you find inside. Really mix of colours, mix of swirly grain, and they don't have the sort of grain. They often don't have any kind of discernible grain direction, as you would in, say, a regular piece of timber. They're interesting things to work. They're often very hard. Oak burrs and chestnut burrs are quite hard. Mm-hmm. Field maple burr I sometimes work with is pretty hard. Right. And there are, half a dozen trees that often form burrs. Oak. Right. Chestnut, alder, birch, field maple, and then things like robinia, false acacia, that will form quite nice burrs. Yeah, they're interesting things. they're interesting things.
Yeah, they're beautiful, and what I like is you utilise these birds. A lot of people would just discard them, wouldn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And stuff, so.
Yeah, I mean, wood turners often want the really big ones that they can turn a bowl out of. The small ones, until I would say until I came along, that can't be quite true. But I quite like working with the small ones that, like you say, would have been discarded, and it's how I got into making these little coffee scoops and little Kuksa type things. You know, if you like, I'll tell you what the.
Yes, please.
These are birch, which is one of the most reliable ones to work with. You know, it's interesting colours, fairly kind of. What I might say almost predictable working qualities. This is a Hazell burr, which is it was a tiny little lump nodule, just seemed fun to work with. Alder, which is a bit of colour. This is a bit of what's called red bud. This was brought to me by a friend from Indiana. That, believe it or not, is a bit of blackcurrant.
Wow. So.
That's a bit of sweet chestnut, that's a bit of apple, and that's a bit of apple.
And one thing you mentioned to me in previous discussion today, you were saying that when you carve these, you carve them as a symmetrical shape. As they dry, the burr kind of dries at a very, very irregular shape, unpredictable, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. They can often sort of really distort as they dry and pull themselves out of shape, really. I mean, this is a pretty wacky shape. But that shape results partly from the way the thing dried, and they sometimes almost collapse or twist themselves into a nut shape, you know. And previously I would think, oh, that's no good, I'll chuck it. But I kind of started just accepting that a bit more and kind of going with the flow. As long as I can get something interesting and useful out of it, and hopefully beautiful, I will accept that kind of distortion, and sometimes even accentuate it when it finishes the thing. So I'll often rough carve it, right, and then leave it to dry mostly, so it's almost dry when I finish it. Then I can do a bit of finishing with a knife, and I often, depending on how it finishes, I'll often sand the interior of the bowl.
Right.
Because that can be difficult to get a good finish on with a knife. Not always. Sometimes I'm able to finish that with a knife, but I do often sand the inside of the bowl.
So Martin, so to begin the process, so you've got a piece here, haven't you?
Yeah. This is effectively a sort of slice out of a big alder burr. Right. That. I got recently, and I cut it up. It's a bit like being a diamond cutter in a way. You kind of look at this beautiful, potentially very beautiful, interesting bit of wood, and you want to get as much out of it as you can. You don't want to waste stuff. So I cut it up and gave the biggest pieces to my brother John Hazell, who turns a lot of green timber on a power lathe. Right. And I kept the offcuts for me, and that's pretty big offcut. It was, it's this size of a burr. Right. And I'm just put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just having a look at it and looking for sort of any serious cracks, or you often get inclusions, bark inclusions or things on burr, but that looks pretty good to me.
Just a quick question, inclusion, what is inclusion?
Inclusion, well, as the burr grows, you often get 2 or even 3 burrs will grow together and start to fuse. Right. And sometimes they take a bit of bark with them. So, a few years on, you've got what looks like a massive burr, but is in fact sort of 2 or 3 fused together. And sometimes you'll get part way into there and you'll find a sort of cavity, bark-lined cavity, a bit of a kind of a void, or a soft part.
Right, gotcha.
So we can't guarantee there aren't any in there, but it looks pretty solid stuff to me.
Excellent stuff. So with this one, you're looking at it. So what are you going to do?
Right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take an existing shape as a starting point, and I'm going to lay it on there because I'm going to do something that sort of shape and size, I'm also going to orient the outside of the handle onto the outside of the burr, because I'll often carve them with a natural edge to the handle.
Right, gotcha.
And then I'm just going to draw around that with a pencil as a sort of starting point. Just very loosely. So I've at least got an idea. So, I mean, you can hardly see that, but there's a sort of shape in there.
Right.
Of an oval bowl and a curved handle.
You've intentionally done it to the side so to kind of use up your wood efficiently.
Yes, that's right. So what I could do a little bit later, I could potentially get another one in there,
right,
and another one in there. Like I say, it's a bit like being a diamond cutter.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to use as much as I can. The next thing I'm going to do on there is put a centre line on that I can, orient out from and measure from.
So that just gives you the correct symmetry, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not absolutely dead on symmetry. It hasn't got to be symmetrical, but if it's asymmetrical, I'd like to at least know about it. So I've put what I reckon is a centre line on there,
right,
and then I'm going to get a felt pen, and I'm going to just sort of really put in some marks that I can work to. I'm also going to broaden the handle out a little bit from that one there, and I like curves. I like these curves.
I do as well, especially on women.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
That's ideal. I'm going to carve myself. Basically, this represents all the women I've ever known. Well, not all of them, obviously.
All of them. I don't think the video will be long enough.
That'd be thousands, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Three, yeah.
3,000.
This doesn't actually look like any woman I've ever gone out with, to be honest.
I know, I would be a little bit concerned, especially with 3,000 of them.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I've marked that on, and what I'm going to do, if it were a spoon and I've marked out a spoon blank, I would probably then take it to a chopping block and cut it out with an axe. But I'm going to saw it because there's two reasons. One, I want to make sure I retain as much material as I can. The other one is that because the grain in burrs is so kind of wild, it doesn't, you chop it with an axe and it doesn't split away in the way that a regular piece of timber would.
Gotcha.
So you can sit there on a chopping block with a bit of regular wood, a bit of alder, a bit of hazel, and you can sort of predict when you work with an axe what's going to come away. I could, hit that with an axe and it wouldn't.
You can go off in any direction, basically.
So I'm going to put it in a vise. We're going. You don't necessarily have to have a vise, but since I currently can't really stand because of my injured leg, I'm going to use a vise to aid my suboptimal body conditions, as it's technically known. So I'm going to whack it in the vise, and I'm going to use a saw to cut that shape out.
Excellent. So it's all in the vise?
Yeah, I put the blank in the vise. I'm just using a regular panel saw.
So here we are, we've just popped outside the workshop, so the chopping block. So this is a Nick Westerman axe, isn't it?
It is world famous Nick Westerman, best axe in the world.
Is this something you forged with him? Or?
No, I have forged an axe with him, but this is one he forged for me a few years ago. Great axe, fantastic axe.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So now you said that you've kind of taken away a lot of it with the saw.
Yeah.
You're going to do the finer work with the
yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of shaping with the axe because although I said earlier it doesn't kind of split away in the way you'd expect with regular timber, you can still use a really good sharp axe for cutting away stuff. So I'm going to try and even that up a little bit.
Right.
Just get a bit of slightly better shape. And you can start to see the burl
Really starting to pop out,
grain
isn't
in
it?
there. Yeah.
Gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Now the other thing I want to do, because this side I want the handle to come up, I can cut some of that away with an axe. Obviously you've got to be quite careful, you've got to be very careful with an axe when you're holding such a short piece of timber. So sometimes you get to the point where you want to put it in and do a drop cut like that.
Right.
Which is pretty safe. It's pulled the bark away there, but I want to leave this natural edge as much as I can.
Right.
Looks like a sort of moon landscape. It can be very, very interesting feature if you can get a decent, interesting edge there. Carry on doing a bit of cutting there. Axe block wobbling a bit. Usually I stand up at the axe block, but I'm sat down again because of my damaged leg at the moment. And you do need a sharp axe for this sort of work.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, you see that interesting grain coming out there. I can also take some of the sides off a little bit there. Of course, the more you do with an axe, the less you've got to do with a knife.
Yeah, this is something I'm still working on with my spoons.
Yeah.
Trying to get as close as I can with the axe. What I've personally found, and obviously you're very experienced, with myself is I think I lack the confidence
Yeah.
with the axe, you know, so I'm still very tentative.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a natural thing to do, and it's better to be safe than sorry. You know, sometimes it's worth just getting a lump of wood and, you know, doing some work with an axe that you're not worried about. You always want to be careful you don't chop yourself to pieces, but don't worry too much about chopping the piece of wood to pieces.
Yes, yeah.
So it's almost worth having a sacrificial bit of timber or two and just doing some axe practice. Looks a funny irregular shape, but it's something I can work with.
Yes.
See if I can take that corner off a little bit there.
Do you know when you're doing? I'm curious. When you're using the axe, do you keep the axe going in one direction, just move the wood around?
Yes.
And
Yes. You want to keep the axe going vertically.
right.
And move the piece of timber. So there, you know, I might be wanting to sort of make a curved shape, in which case I'm pulling the block of wood down, rather than trying to cut with the axe in
Right.
a curved shape. Because you know, using the axe vertically, you're using gravity. It wants to go straight down, and you can angle the piece of timber.
Because I'm trying to get myself out of that habit. I find myself moving both.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You're better off just keeping the axe going up and down. Another thing to say about axe work is, you probably notice I've got the axe gripped fairly loosely. You wouldn't say loosely necessarily, but not kind of super tight.
Yes.
If you keep a fairly relaxed grip on the axe, it causes a lot less kind of stress to your hand.
Right.
The other thing is, I haven't got my thumb on the back of the axe. Again, that can cause a lot of sort of jarring into the hand. There are times when I'll put my thumb on the back, but you don't want to do that as a general rule, because
Right.
you know you'll end up with a lot of hand problems. So you know, fairly kind of natural swing, and you also don't need to kind of raise it very high.
Yes. Yeah.
If you've got a nice sharp axe, you know, you can do little short strokes, very controlled chopping strokes, cutting strokes, moving the blank around a bit, keeping your hand reasonably relaxed. You need to concentrate and relax at the same time, which sounds like an impossibility, but it isn't. The other thing is just clear your block off every now and again,
Right.
just so that you don't get sort of bounces, and you can also see that you're on a good stable surface.
So Martin, so you've done the axe work.
Yeah.
And now is it the knife work now?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to do some basic knife work on the outside of this, just to get it more into that shape that I want. There's my knife. Another Nick Westerman blade. My kind of crazy handle work on there. Probably a knife grip that a lot of people are familiar with, and it's often used a bit too much, is what's called the thumb push. It's a really useful cut, and can be, you know, I can follow that blue line there,
right,
with it like that. So I'm pushing with my left thumb. Very, very good controlled technique cut. Obviously this knife is very, very sharp, otherwise you couldn't do that sort of thing. And I say it's a very good knife grip, but it's a little bit overused. Again, a little bit like I was saying with the axe work, you don't want to be kind of tensed up and gripping all the time. You need to, if you're going to be doing a lot of this sort of stuff, you need to spread the load throughout your body, and this is particularly true of the hands. And you need to be using your muscles carefully, particularly when you get to my age, you know. Oh dear. So a useful knife grip to use is what's called the chicken wings, or the chest expander, or the
right.
And what you're doing is, instead of having the knife facing that way, which you would do, you would turn it round so it faces outside,
right,
in the opposite direction, and you're working like that. You're pulling your
Gotcha.
arms apart, and you tend to put it up at your chest like that, and put the knife on the work, and then you just kind of open your arms out as though you're trying to fly. If you do take off at any stage, it means you're doing it too strongly.
Yeah. Would it be advised to wear a parachute and a crash helmet?
I normally do. But that's a very powerful, although it's quite a short stroke, it's a very powerful stroke. And sometimes I move both, but very often I find myself keeping the work still and moving the knife, or keeping the knife still and moving the work.
Right.
So that's really removing a lot of material off the back of the Kuksa. Very safe. I mean, it's very difficult to cut yourself. You'd have to work quite hard to cut yourself with that. Apart from the tip, you might catch yourself with the tip. But it's a very safe and very powerful knife grip. And save you, you know, if you could do that with a thumb push, but it would take you like 3 months to do a coffee scoop. Plus, your hands would be completely knackered.
Right.
So, you know, I would recommend sort of spreading the load a bit between knife grips. You know, I think some of your other videos have shown or will show, you know, spoon carving grips, and there are quite a few knife grips, but that is one that's very useful. You can see the material coming off there.
You're removing a lot, aren't you?
Yeah. So it's very controlled, very powerful, short stroke. Not brilliant for sort of long work on a, you know, knife, spoon handle or something, but for things like that, very, very good stroke. Again, relies on the knife being really sharp.
I think that's one thing I think a lot of us learn the hard way, isn't it? With the sharpening, or how kind of effective sharp tools are.
Yes.
How dangerous the dull ones can be.
Yeah. You know, if that was really dull, I'd be putting a huge amount of energy in. I'm doing sort of hybrid there, sort of reverse Albanian thumb grip style. Sometimes you kind of you can sort of mix them up a little bit, the knife grips. But yeah, if that wasn't sharp, you know, to get that material off, I'd have to expend a huge amount of energy. And also, if I slipped and sort of cut myself, I'd be really sort of working hard.
Plus there's too much paperwork if you stab someone.
That's right.
Too much blood to clean up.
That's right.
It's just
Yeah.
a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean,
Been there, done it too many times, and it's just
the blood, washing the blood out of the
that's
clothes.
it. That's it. Hardy evidence, disposing of the body. It's just.
So you can see I'm starting to, this is really exposing the interesting grain of burl in there, and it does vary a lot as to how much burr there is in this piece of wood. There's bits of what one might call regular grain there, which in many ways adds to the interest as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just going to continue shaping this, get it into the sort of shape that on the bottom that's represented by these lines. I'm going to cut in here. I'll just show you another way of doing that. Another grip. You hold the work like that. Hold the knife in your dominant hand like that, and you're going to cut towards you. If it were a spoon, I could brace it against my chest, but I'm going to brace it against my leg here. And what I'm doing, I'm pushing with my left hand. Again, it's virtually impossible to cut yourself. It would be if I braced it there with my thumb,
yes,
which I might do, but I need to be aware of that. But there, that's very difficult to cut yourself.
So you're pushing your knuckles up, basically?
Yeah, I'm using my left hand to push my knuckles, and actually I've got the knife blade held quite high up, so I'm not using the full length of the blade. That's often called the supported grip. So people often think cutting towards you is dangerous, is a no-no, but actually if it's thought through, you know, can be just as safe. And again, I'm working to that line. I'm not you know, don't have to work exactly to that line. We'll get to a point where I start ignoring the line in a minute. Do the same on the other side. It's a bit more difficult when you're working the other way up. I can't quite see what I'm doing. In fact, I'm going to change grip there. I'm just going to come in there with a thumb push there, just to get that material removed. Another possibility to thumb push is what's called a thumb pivot, where you don't push with your thumb, you just use it as a fulcrum. The knife acts as a lever, you see that there. So I'm not actually using my thumb except just to hold that in place like that. And now I'm going to cut into that.
So Martin, you've done the outside, the shaping with a knife.
Yeah,
beautiful work.
Yeah, yeah. I've got it into sort of shape I like. I've also put another line on here. I'll just take it out of the vise, and you can see what I'm going to do is I want to get a bit of curve at the top, because the whole thing's a flat carved thing. So I'm just drawing a line on there, and I'm going to cut that face off with the saw. I could axe it. Partly because of my gammy leg, I'm going to saw it, but also it gives me a bit of accuracy.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'm going to put it in the vise and saw that off. Oh, just make sure I got hold of that properly. So I've just cut a bit off there. I'm just taking the knife again, just cleaning up that face, and you can see it's got a bit of a curve in it now for the side. And then a little bit further on, I can start doing a bit of hollowing on it.
Is that to give it the curvature, shape, and kind of ergonomics? Basically.
Yeah, ergonomics. It'll look more attractive, but also it'll be easier to use. very, very flat things like that kind of don't function quite as well. Slight curve there, so it comes up at the front.
Right. Gotcha.
Usually works better for spoons, for ladles,
Gotcha.
for kuksas.
So Martin, you've done a lot of the finishing cuts in as much as is possible, obviously
Yeah.
before the refinement.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? You're working on the hollowing of the bowl?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm going to put myself a bit of a line to work to, and I'm going to start hollowing the bowl out. So I tend to use my kind of finger as a sort of marking gauge, and I'll come in a little bit. I don't want to, initially I don't want to carve too close to the edge. I want to give myself plenty of meat, or wood in this case, to go at. I don't want to kind of risk going through. So I'm just putting a line on there with a pencil, you can see, and I'm going to make sure I stick inside that line.
Okay.
When I start working. I've got this scorp, I don't know if you know about these scorps made by Lee Stoffer, using blades made by the Nick Westerman blacksmithing machine. Beautiful tools, fantastic tools, and this is this would be my tool of choice on this, and it's a bit like a spoon knife. It works away or it works towards you. So I'm going to start by putting it on there and starting hollowing out that.
So you're staying within the edge, right?
I'm staying within the edge. I'm sort of working from that mark inwards. And with burr, with it not having the sort of grain that a regular bit of timber has, you're not restricted by, it's not a question of going with the grain or against the grain,
Just
because
go for it,
the edge is sort of, it's like carving a massive hard block of cheese, Well, sort of. So you can see that's sort of eating it up a little bit, and then I'll come in from that far edge and just take some of that out there.
And the whole time you're bracing it safely and you're...
Yeah, I'm trying to work safely. I'm trying to keep my thumb sort of down so that I don't. If I have my thumb up there when I pull across, and if I slip, I'm going to cut my thumb like that. Try and keep your thumb down. You will see my thumb will come up a bit. If you keep your thumb down below the edge, that's safer. And it's a sort of rolling action as well. I've got big hands, really big hands, so I can grip that with my fingers.
Right.
Other people might struggle, but that's the sort of action I use, a sort of rolling action towards me. And I'm working from the edge, making sure I leave that pencil line on, really, because I can always come back and take more, but what I can't do is add stuff on. When you start hollowing, you can get carried away. When we get further on into the hollowing down towards the bottom, it's crucial to keep feeling the thickness,
right.
So you don't go too thin, or even worse, go through the bottom. And if I do find a bit where I've gone a little bit thin, what I will do, I will come and, I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, but this is a useful little tip. If you find a place where you've gone a little bit thin, I put an X on with a pencil.
Right.
Just as a reminder to avoid it. So there's quite a lot of hollowing to do here. You could speed this up. You could use, if you were very confident, you could use an adze, or if you had a good way of holding it, you could use a gouge.
Right.
I'm just going to stick with this spoon, this scorp thing.
I've seen guys do that, haven't they, with the gouge? They clamp it in and then they...
Yeah, you could put it in a vise, or once you've started a cut like this, I've got a couple of gouges that I feel confident enough to work, and you know,
Yeah.
keep your hands behind the blade, obviously. But I find with a gouge, you don't want to start at hollowing because there's a lot of propensity to skid off.
Right.
Once you've got a little hollow to work down into, that's a lot safer. But I'm sort of nibbling away at this. I think the other thing to think about with a lot of work generally is don't try and take too much at a time. You know, don't kind of think, oh, I'll get in there and take a massive great chunk out. You're better off just doing little bits, because you don't want to wear yourself out. You don't want to give yourself strain in your hands. I've got it resting on my knee, so I haven't got to hold it up in the air, so I'm not wasting too much energy, because that means you'd only have to be able to carve one Kuksa every 20 years. So
yeah, that's not a bad output.
Well, you know, if it's a really nice one, that's great. Now I'm really able to. This is the advantage of something like a scorp. It's like a left-handed and a right-handed spoon knife, but you can also flip it around like that and hold it like that and get in, do that sort of work. You know, I'd recommend getting one of these if you can persuade Lee to part with one. You know, they sell out in about 2 milliseconds, but you know, if you can get one, they're very good.
For me, it's my tool of choice as well.
Yeah.
So Martin, at this stage then, you've done as much as you can then in terms of the hollowing and the knife work.
Yeah. Yeah, what I've done, I've hollowed it out, and as I was saying just before, I've got a feeling and making sure I've got plenty of meat left to finish it off. It's still wet, this thing, but I've hollowed it out, and I'm happy with the basic hollowing. But I'm going to set it to dry a little bit now, because sometimes when burrs dry, they're a bit unpredictable, let's say, and they can distort wildly. So I'm going to leave it to dry, and then I'm going to come back and finish it. And my usual style of finishing is sort of knife finished exterior. Take some of those facets off, clean that up there. Knife finished exterior, and often a sanded interior. Sometimes I finish the interior with a knife, but particularly with deeper things, it can be difficult to get the finish that I want on the interior. The other thing is with burr, it's often so amazing. You want to reveal the grain through sanding, or at least I do. You might not.
Just one quick side, Kevin. I just realised with the drying, is there a particular way in which you dry them? Do you live in a particular environment with wood chippings, or how would you?
I don't with these. I just put these on my work table at home, which is in a regular room, but it's quite a cool room.
Okay.
Some people dry things quickly. Some people put things in like you say, in bags of shavings. I haven't found that necessary with smaller things. Certainly, once you get up to larger stuff, particularly if you've left a lot of thickness on there, yeah, you might want to do that. But something this size, I would just sit it on a table in a coolish room, and then I would go back to it after 2 or 3 days, and just see what it's done, see if it's gone into some completely surreal shape, in which case I'm then going to think about either carving it back to being sensible, or
just letting it go,
or accentuate that shape. Sometimes I do.
Gotcha.
As long as it can still function as a scoop or a Kuksa, or this one's sort of somewhere in between scoop and Kuksa. Scoopsa,
that's it. So with that one then, so once you've done the knife work, once you've kind of sanded the insides, is there a particular type of sandpaper that you use?
I use stuff called Abranet. Here it is. I highly recommend it. Abranet, which you can get from people like Axminster, or tool dealers. It's not paper. It's a sort of a plasticky sort of material, flexible plasticky material. I find that really good. It can get clogged up with stuff, but you can wash it.
Oh wow! Okay.
I just wash it in a bit of soap and water, and then leave it to dry. And what that washing tends to do is just take out some of the junk that's in it. And eventually, you'll get to the point where it's not doing very much. But yeah. So that's really good. That's really good. And I go down to, when I'm sanding the interior of a Kuksa, I'd go down to 600 grit.
Right.
You probably know that when the lower the number, the coarser the thing is. Start with about 80 grit, go to 600 or sometimes 1,000 grit, but I don't go any finer than that. That's good enough for me. And then when I'm happy with it, I will treat it with, I use raw food quality linseed oil.
Okay.
I put that in a bowl and I let it soak in linseed oil for an hour or two, and then I take it out, drain it. Once you've oiled it, I find, you know, that will show up little what I might call imperfections or things you don't like, and you're still able, when the oils, particularly when the oil, before the oil's dried off, you're still able to come back and do a little bit of tweaking work with it with a knife. It's more difficult to sand once it's been oiled, because the oily wood dust really clogs up the abranet. But you can certainly come back and do a little bit of minor tweaking on the outside with a knife if you want to.
Excellent. So, all being well, you should end up with some beautiful work like this then.
Yeah, that's kind of you to say that. Yeah, these are things that have been finished in that way. Hazell burr, that's like a little Kuksa, alder burr. And this one I was talking about earlier. It's a shrub from the US called redbud. This was brought to me by a friend from Indiana called Philippe Steele. He brought it over last year in his luggage. You know, people do
wood smuggling.
Wood smuggling. Yeah. If the American wood police are listening, watching this video, which they should be, I would recommend you go to Philip Steele's house now and arrest him.
That's
because
it.
He's been very, very naughty.
That's it. As long as you can get to keep your cooks though.
Yeah.
But these are beautiful, seriously. But so really, we should end up with something along these lines.
I would. Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah.
Excellent.
My pleasure.
So there you go. That is a wrap for this video. Martin, thank you so much.
The pleasure's Ed.
Excellent
As always.
Yeah, and it's been eye-opening for me. It's the first time I've actually seen the process. I was actually going to see the process anyway, and Martin very kindly gave me the permission to kind of pull the camera out and record his process that he's very kindly shared with you. Actually, it doesn't do a lot of stuff on video, and it's crazy. He's a great teacher. So hopefully, Martin, maybe in the future, you'll be seeing a lot more on my channel. Now, if you saw the previous video that I've done with him, which was how to carve beads using elder, then you can see obviously some of his background. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to that in case you haven't watched that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to put a link to Martin's website, where you can find out a lot more about the work that he does. He's not just a very talented woodworker and spoon carver, he's also a master basket maker. So he's very, very talented on a broad range of skills. So in his website you'll be able to find a lot more information about the work that he does and other things that he gets up to. You teach, don't you, as well?
I do, yes.
The thing. Is that here in Dorset and also...
Yeah, I do teach here in Dorset, but I also travel around teaching. You know, I've been over in France last year teaching, and you know, here, there and everywhere. I'm available to travel to your venue.
Excellent. And I'm not just saying it because he's here, but he's one of the best teachers that I've met when it comes to all of this stuff.
Very kind of you, Zed.
Very, very good.
You're one of the best students I've had.
That's it. I bet you say that to all your students.
Yeah, I do, to be fair. You were actually terrible.
That's it. Actually minimised my jokes on this occasion as well. That was it. That was actually pretty good. But no, please do go check out the website. Also, Martin, along with his brother and also Martin's wife, they have their own Instagram profile where they're starting to share their work. So it would mean the world to me if you go and check out their Instagram profile, link below in the description, and also the website to find out. That's it. In the description below this video. And like I said, you can go find out more about the work they do. So Martin, thank you once again.
Hey Zed, it's always a pleasure, mate.
Excellent, thank you so much. Oh, actually, one thing I quickly forgot to say. I've taken some snaps, some general photos of my time here. I'm actually here with Lee Stoffer also, who you've seen in my videos previously. It's actually behind the camera, okay. And also Martin, and like I said, you know, the hospitality that they've shown us here. So I'm going to put a link to that photo album below in the description box below this video. As you can see, there's a lot of links in it below this video. There's a lot of links below this video.
It's really building up in the south.
I'll tell you, next we're going to be sitting up here. There's so many links in this description. But please do go check those out. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video. A big thank you to Martin once again for taking the time out to share his skill. And as always, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. For Martin and myself, peace out.
Cheers, Daddy-o.